Hello and welcome to Calls. This is the 2021 Wyndham Championship Data Dive Show. This is the last tournament before the FedEx Cup playoffs, so we have a lot of data to dig into and find the storylines that'll match up and see which guys are going to make the push to make the playoffs and which are going to fall out due to not being in the top 125. So try to make this a quick intro. Follow me on social media. Links in the description below. That's where I'm going to post my betting cards for betting card for the week. And then, as always, chat's open. Want the interaction? Let me know what you're thinking for this week. Still want to hear how you did last week because my St. Jude was terrible. Lost pretty much everything I put into that. And then the Barracuda, I was alive until Adam Shank decided to shank. But so chat's open. Let me know what you're wanting to see tonight in the data show. And then last but not least, of course, all statistics provided by FantasyNational.com. I say it every time. Amazing resource. It's going to make you a much more intelligent gambler and much better DFS player. So with all that said, let's go ahead and get into the Wyndham data. And we're going to start with the... let me get the camera focused in here. Start with the information that I was trying to get all last night, and it wasn't out while the show was live. And that is the tournament fact sheet for the Wyndham Championship. We're at Sedgefield Country Club in Greensboro, North Carolina. It has been here since at least 2012. It's been here for a while, so players are familiar with the course who have played here quite often. The biggest thing that I want to highlight is that this is a par 70 layout at 7,131 yards. It's a short course. Most of the par 4s here are between 400 and 450. There's no, the two par 5s are short by PGA Tour standards. It's just a short course. The green size is about 6,000 square feet, so it's about average, about tour average. There are only 52 bunkers, which is smaller in comparison than a lot of courses. There's 5 water hazards, but 6 holes in play, so one water hazard covers 2 holes. We're on Bermuda grass, and Bermuda grass throughout the entire course, tee to green, fairways, rough, everything. The only other thing that's different than last year was that the new tee box was added on hole 14, which makes it 25 yards longer, but it's still well within the less than 7,200 metric on Fantasy National. So again, I wanted to bring this up because I kept trying to find it last night. It wasn't out. So definitely we're going to look at some short course statistics. This is a Don Ross design. There it is. This is a Don Ross design. So there are a few courses in Fantasy National of Don Ross, but not many. So when we dig into the data, there's a couple of things to note. And I've made some notes here that some of the comparable courses you might not think about for Sedgefield. And basically they're southern Bermuda grass courses and then one outlier, but there's a lot of crossover success. So the southern courses you would think, Harbor Town in South Carolina is a pretty good comparable course. Bermuda Greens, short course. Plays a little tougher than this does. Winning scores here at Sedgefield get to be about 22, 23 under. Harbortown usually doesn't get to that, but it can play easy at times. So that is one comparable course. The other is actually TPC Sawgrass, the Players Championship. Just because of the location, it's Bermuda, southern course. Sawgrass is a little bit longer than Sedgefield, but not by much. And then the outlier is Wylie, the Sony Open in Hawaii. And that's mainly due to, they have Bermuda greens as well, but that's mainly due to the fact that it is a easy course and it is a very short course, so there's a lot of crossover success there in the sense that Sedgefield, Waialae, to some extent Harbortown and Sawgrass, they're wedge type courses. Guys who can hit their wedges and putt well that week are going to win, and that's no different here than at Sedgefield. So with that being said, let's go ahead and dig into the data for the Sedgefield, and we'll start where we kind of left off last night in the initial research show. This was the model that I had initially made. You can see 10% off the tee, 20 approach, so on down the line, and I'm going to adjust this by my standards pretty heavily. Having looked at some of the crossover success of the courses and green types and all that stuff, we're going to make some adjustments here quite heavily. I'm actually going to remove off the tee. This is just not going to be that much. Tee is not a factor. Off the tee is not much of a factor this week. Certainly if you're a long hitter, you can win, but you don't have to be. So I don't think off the tee is going to factor in too much. I'm going to increase approach maybe even more than 25%, but right now it's going to stay at 25%. Excuse me while I bring up chat. Around the green, I'm going to increase to 10% because this is a wedge type course. Hopefully those wedges are coming from the fairway and you're hitting your proximities more than that. Not having to worry about around the green, but in case you aren't, scrambling is going to be pretty important, and I'm just tying that all into around the green. I want to increase putting, but I don't want to take away any of these other statistics. I honestly think 3-putt avoidance is going to be pretty important, as there's a lot more 3-putts at this course than the regular tour event. Don Ross designs are generally smaller greens and undulating greens. These can certainly be undulating, but they're not small, so they make up for that with pretty fast green speeds here at Sedgefield. So I do want to keep this. I can argue taking away the 5% of the bogey avoidance, but you're going to need to generate opportunities. And even though I normally go for birdies or better on easy courses, I'm just looking at opportunities because there's really only one eagle hole, and that's one of the par 5s. I believe it's on the front 9. I believe it's the front 9 par 5. I'm just going to cheat and take a look here real quick. Yeah, 6% for hole 5. It's a very short par 5. So instead of going birdies or better, because there's only really one hole for eagles, I'm just going to go by opportunities gained, which generally signifies that players are giving themselves better chances to score well. So the combination of that and putting and all that gives you the opportunities gained. I still want to stress the par 4s. That has been the biggest success here at Sedgefield. 8 of the 12 par 4s are still in this range. I mean, or at this range, not still, but they're at this range. And this is where the majority of the proximity of iron approaches come in, or wedge approaches. So just removing the off the tee and adding 5% to the approach and the around the green, it won't change too much. And again, I've been trying to play with this all day, and that might not seem all that drastic when I said that I changed it quite a bit, but you'll see in the mixed condition model where my changes come in. So by the new standards here, Louis Oosthuizen is number 1. Brian Stewart rises to number 2. Kevin Streelman, Patrick Reed, and Hank Lebioda are your top 5. Varner, Matsuyama, Grace, Seamus Power, and Chris Kirk round out your top 10. And if we want to look at bogey avoidance, Oosthuizen clearly number 1, but all of these guys up here in the top 10 are no worse than 23rd for Matsuyama, and most are in the top 15. So it's going to be, that's why I thought about removing the 5% on the bogey avoidance. I kept off the tee's not being factored, but I kept it in there just to see. And I think I might be doing that with the bogey avoidance as well. You see the par fours, Louis number 1, Brandon Grace and Seamus Power are second in par 4 scoring, and then Schwartzel, Reed, Snedeker, Todd, Ryan Armour, Brian Stewart, and Harold Varner round out, and Matsuyama tied for 10th. Round out your top 10. Looking at three putt avoidance, the only one that's really bad at 3 putts in this top 10 right now is Charles Schwartzel. And to be fair, he's 24th in overall in the model. When you sort again by this, so you've got Lebiota at 130th or 129th at 3 putt avoidance, which is surprising because he's actually a pretty darn good putter. Now Bermuda is certainly not his best green type by any means, but he's been very, very hot with the putter. So it's surprising to see how bad he is at avoiding 3 putts. So my guess is it's coming from these rounds down here, and I do believe I only have it at I think I have it at the last 50 rounds. Nope, last 36. Okay, so I'm imagining a lot of those 3 putts came in here. Again, I don't know. That's just the pretty simple assumption there. But he's been on fire with his putter lately, so I was surprised to see how low he is ranked in terms of avoiding 3 putts. The other one that's high on the rankings board is Matsuyama, and that should be no surprise. He is generally pretty shaky with the putter anyway. So whenever his putter does cooperate, like it did at the Masters, he's going to be in contention, if not win, because he's one of the best players in the world. Some other notable people: Russell Henley, bad at avoiding 3 putts. Kyle Stanley, Johnny Vegas, Stanley should be no surprise. Vegas should be no surprise. Schwartzel's not that great. I mean, he's an okay putter, but not fantastic by any means. So, but if we want to look at just the approach, because it's so important here, and the proximity, to be fair, let's actually look at the proximity more than the approach. You've got Matthew Neesmith is the best in the field at this range, in 6th overall in approach. He just can't do a damn thing else. That's the problem. But you get irons in his hand. If he ever makes a putt, he might actually be a legitimate golfer. Right now, he's just shit because he can't do anything else other than hit his irons. Russell Knox, Luke Donald. You can see some commonalities here. Most of these guys who are good from this distance are going to be good iron players anyway. The exception is Robbie Shelton. And you can see that literally he is not very good at anything else other than this distance. And he's okay around the green. He's actually pretty good around the green, but literally just awful at everything else. So he's the one outlier here. You see Matsuyama number 1 in strokes gained approach the last 36 rounds, 9th at this proximity, so on and so forth. So Shelton's the only outlier for the proximity. Let's look at these two, the par 4s and par 4s of the distance. No surprise, again, you have a lot of high high ranking leaders here, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 6th, 1st, and 5th, respectively, at 10th and a 1st. The real big outlier is Robert McIntyre. He's pretty good at par 4s, but terrible at this range of par 4s, or at this distance of par 4s. So, if we want to filter on just short courses, because this is an extremely short course, again, not changing it. Actually, you know what? I'm going to remove the bogey avoidance, and let's add some putting, because putting is just going to be very, very crucial this week. If you're not hot with the putter, you just don't win at Sedgefield, just because guys are generally sticking it close anyway. So you really have to make your putts if you're going to stay with the leaders, that is. If we remove the bogey avoidance, Webb Simpson actually rises to number 1 on easy courses. Then Harold Varner, Russell Henley, Adam Scott, Patrick Reed are your top 5. Damon, Kirk, Rose, Glover, and Kisner. So those are the players who tend to play short courses very well in the past 36 rounds. I'm actually going to shrink that to the last 24, and let's take a look at that. I imagine Webb Simpson's still high up there. Henley, number 1. Siwoo Kim rises to 2nd in the last 24 rounds. Webb Simpson, Harold Varner, Jones, and then Kirk, Kisner, Scott, Reed, and Glover. So a lot of overlap there, obviously. It's surprising to see Siwoo Kim, but again, one of the courses that you wouldn't think, and Bermuda is certainly not his, I mean, he's not a great putter anyway, but his Bermuda putting is pretty bad. One of the courses that surprisingly has some crossover success as well is the Amex. This is La Quinta, Nicklaus Tournament course, and the Stadium course at the Amex. And even though it plays longer than Sedgefield, I mean, it's still less than 7,200. It is still an easy course in terms of relative to par. That's the Nicklaus. There's the Stadium. La Quinta also is pretty darn easy. We'll look at 2020 before COVID hits. All of it's scoring relative to par. All of it is less than 7,200. The difference is the weather and the time of year. This is out in the desert. This is in La Quinta, California, I believe. And then this is played in February, so a lot drier, less humid, and so on. But a lot of overlap here. The main difference being this was Sedgefield's a Don Ross. This is a Pete Dye and Jack Nicklaus design. But you can see scores can get crazy. 2020 it was minus 26. Siwoo earlier this year won at minus 23, which is a common win for Sedgefield. 2019 at the Amex, it was 26. So again, guys go very, very low here on Bermuda grass, on a short course, easy to par. So this is actually a really good comparison course as well, or at least a comparison event that uses a lot of crossover success and crossover conditions. So that's why Siwoo jumps to number 2 when you factor in the last 24 as opposed to 36. So let's still keep this short course length. Let's add easy and keep the same percentages and such. Again, some of these other courses, you got Harbor Town, I mentioned. La Quinta was part of the trio. Monterey is one of the 3 courses that is at the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. Oh shoot, what did I do? Nine Bridges is in South Korea. It used to be the CJ Cup at Nine Bridges. It has now moved. This past year was at Shadow Creek in Vegas, Pebble Beach, PGA West. There's Sedgefield. Spyglass Hill is the other one. So you have Spyglass Hill, Monterey Peninsula, and Pebble Beach that make up the AT&T Pro-Am. So TPC Deer Run is short and easy. We just came there for the John Deere. TPC River Highlands, where the Travelers is. There's Sawgrass, Scottsdale for the Waste Management Phoenix Open. There's Waialae, the Sony Open, which I mentioned earlier. So there's a lot of courses to compare to Sedgefield, and you'll notice that when we go into the mixed condition model here. But I just wanted to show you an overall last final view, when you add easy and short courses, Webb Simpson's number 1, Kevin Na rises to number 2. Henley, Siwoo, Ryan Moore, Justin Rose, Kuchar, Kisner, Reed, and Glover. Kuchar's an interesting case this week because he is right on the fence of qualifying for the FedEx Cup playoffs. And the literal bubble boy, 125th in the FedEx Cup standings, is Ricky Fowler. Ricky is 125th. I believe Kuchar's in the high 1-teens, 118, 119. I can check if anybody's really interested. We went over that last night in the initial research show, so go check that out after watching this. But let's look into the mixed condition model that I have been working on pretty much all day as I've been fumbling around. Sorry, I had it already open. I've been fumbling around with a lot of these metrics and the percentages I wanted to use and so on, and trying to find the combination that I felt most comfortable of easy and short and no filters and so on. This is where Fantasy National is such an amazing tool that you can separate things out as detailed as you want. So if you wanted to look at strokes gained total for the last 20, this is strokes gained total last 24 rounds on easy courses that are short. You can dig into that kind of detail. And that's why I had such a troubling time today trying to narrow down this data model, because I wanted to look at a lot of these things together and separate, and you just don't have the percentage to look at it unless you're wanting to put 2 or 3% in a lot of these. So I combined a few just to get an overall look, and maybe we'll split them out here in a second, but just to give you some context as to why I'm using what I am. This is a Don Ross design. There's not many Don Ross designs in the database at Fantasy National, so I only went the last 12 rounds. But I do want to see who plays well on Don Ross designs, so I've got that at 5%. This is a short, easy course, so I wanted to see who plays best on those types of courses. I just want to see who's hitting their irons very well, who has a very good baseline of iron play. So last 36 rounds, and I put that at the highest at 15. Again, I talked earlier about opportunities gained versus birdies are better. Certainly you can go back and forth on those. I just want to look at opportunities gained. I think that's going to be a little bit better, although I won't fault you for looking at birdies are better metric. But again, just like the strokes gained total, I want to see who generates the most opportunities on these short, easy courses. Getting a baseline for the proximity, and I want to see who's hot with those distance and clubs, basically with wedges and maybe soft 9 irons. But these are pros. Let's face it; these are pitching wedges to maybe even gap wedges. So I wanted to get more percentage or more of a feel for who's good from that distance in a long term, and then shorter term put a little bit less of an emphasis on who's playing well from that distance. I just want to see who plays the par fours well, with 12 par fours, and the strokes gained on this course being how am I trying to say this? Let's bring up the graph. That'll explain it better. So most of the time, most courses, the average stroke gained for par 5s are going to highly outweigh the others. This is one of the rare exceptions where par 4s are so pivotal here at Sedgefield. And what I was trying to say and got tongue-tied is you want to really make sure you focus on par 4s this week as opposed to par 5s because of this graph here. So that's why I'm just looking at par 4s as a baseline. I just want to see who plays par 4s well. On the same note, I want to see who plays par 4s of the length the best. 8 of the 12 par 4s at Sedgefield fall between 400 and 450 yards. So that's that's 75% of the par 4s fall into that range. So you want to see who plays that distance of par 4 as well. And then Again, as I get narrower in the filters or really hone in on it, I decrease my sample size. So I want to see who plays this length of par fours on short and easy courses. Kind of the same thought process as who's playing well overall or on a baseline, and then who's hot. Kind of the same thing here, except who has a good baseline, and then as I narrow down and focus just on short and easy, who plays well. The last three, you've got, I just want to see who putts well on fast Bermuda greens, on a baseline, overall baseline, who's hot on fast Bermuda greens, and like I said, I think 3-putt avoidance is going to be important. So I just wanted to see who avoids 3 putts the best. No short course, no Bermuda, no fast or anything. I just want to see who is generally avoiding 3 putts. And when I ran that model, Brian Stewart actually came out number 1, which I was a little skeptical about, and that's why I kept tweaking percentages and trying to add different metrics and such. But once I actually looked into Brian Stewart, it's surprising I didn't think of him beforehand, and I understand on the at a high level why I didn't, because he's not a major name in golf. He kind of sticks to the fringes, might compete every once in a while. He's definitely not a Bermuda specialist. He does play well on easy courses, but when you look at his past few events, he's coming off a top 6 at 3M. He was top 15 at an alternate field event in the Barbasol. And while this isn't an alternate field event, it's kind of like one, because a lot of the bigger names are taking this week off to prepare for the FedEx Cup playoffs. So a lot of guys that are here are either fighting for their spot or trying to position themselves to get into a better seed, mainly for that second tournament, because it goes from top 125 next week at the Northern Trust to the top 70, and then top 30 finally make it to Eastlake. But if you look at Brian Stewart, he's got 3 straight top 15s. You have a missed cut at the Rocket Mortgage, and then a top 30 at the Travelers, which, again, TBC River Highlands isn't a direct comparison because they have bent greens, but it is a short, easier course, and he played fairly well. The 3M, he's coming off of a, tied for 6 when Cameron Champ won. This is certainly longer than Sedgefield, but it can be an easier course at times. Even though 15 was the winner, Brian Stewart tied for 6. He played pretty darn well. He went low, real low in one round here. So, sorry, I didn't mean to close out Brian Stewart completely there, but yeah, so you look at the amount of strokes gained, and because I don't think off the tee is going to matter a lot this week, I am not so concerned about his worst attribute. Because you don't have to be a long hitter to succeed here at Sedgefield. I think Brian Stewart, I'm not going to go crazy and put a big win bet on him or anything, but I can understand. I see the pathway to why he is ranked so highly now. I mean, he is just in fuego with the putter right now. I mean, this is kind of Hank Leviota status, in fuego with the putter. 5 straight events with gaining 2.5 or more. Now, certainly he is volatile. He lost 4th U.S. Open. He lost 3 at the Charles Schwab, which again is a somewhat comparable course, Colonial. It's a little longer, but certainly can play easy. So if you get the good volatility, if you believe Brian Stewart's putting is going, I don't know if it's going to stay at 4 strokes gained over the last 5 events. I don't know if it's going to be that high, but if you get another performance like you did, say, the Barbasol, where you gain 4 here. You're around the green. He's typically pretty good. His irons have come alive as of late. He's just in great form. Now, certainly, he could lose 4 strokes putting. He's negative in the approaches, and he's basically done because he's not going to gain off the tee at all. I can see why lately, because of the, sneakily really good form, why he's so high in the model. I'm still a little skeptical about being number 1, but numbers are numbers. Numbers don't lie. So there's Brian Stewart. He's number 1 in the model. Then it goes Russell Henley, which you kind of think of. I mean, he's just a very good iron player, very good from the proximity in both instances. Louis number 3, Matt Kuchar, who he is not in good form. He is the opposite of Brian Stewart right now. But if there was ever a course to succeed or Matt Kuchar to get back into Kuchar form, I think this would be it. He's missed his 4 of his last 5, 3 in a row. He was not particularly inspiring at the Charles Schwab. But in late March and April, he had a string of 3 or 4 top 20s. Here at the RBC Heritage, which is a direct comp course, he was 18th. The Valero Texas Open, he played very well. Waste Management, he missed the cut at Sony, which is a little troubling because that's a direct correlation course. But Waste Management, he played okay and gained with the putter. Again, he has been putting pretty bad lately, and over the baseline, he has shown that he's a pretty good putter. So, I'm more aching to believe maybe he won't gain 4.5, but maybe he'll gain 1.5. He's been pretty bad with the irons or the approaches lately, but again, baseline, he's positive. As he's gotten older, he certainly has lost his game off the tee. But again, because this doesn't seem to be, or this probably isn't going to be an off the tee type tournament, I like Kuchar this week. And at 180 to 1, you could do worse. Especially because he's a really good putter long term, and Bermuda is generally his best surface. So I like Kuchar this week. He's 4th in my model. 5th is Webb Simpson. He doesn't need really much talk about him. He's popped in all the models. He's one of the favorites, if not the favorite. Is he the favorite? Yeah, he's the favorite at 10 to 1. So not a lot needs to go in there. Russell Knox is somebody else who is interesting to see. Joel Damon at 8, Matsuyama, Hideki at 6, Knox at 7, Joel Damon 8, Chez Reavie 9, and Brendan Todd rounds out your top 10. And a couple of bigger names right under him at Reed at 11, Fowler at 12. But let's take a quick look at the odds here. So as I mentioned, Webb Simpson is your favorite at 10 to 1. You've got Hideki at 14, Louis at 16, Patrick Reed at 20, and Harmon and Kokrak at 22. There's Harmon there. He is 29th in my data model. And Kokrak right below him at 30. So a lot of top end betting odds and in the rankings for me. And I don't really see an issue with any of these. Maybe Harmon is a bit low for my liking at 22. He's not very good with the irons. He's not good at the proximities. He certainly avoids his 3 putts. That's for sure. He generally plays par 4s of this length pretty well. But he hasn't... Which one's this? The 5%? Oh, so he doesn't play short, easy par 4s well lately. But overall, he generally does play these par 4s well. So again, that's the beauty and kind of curse of Fantasy National, is that you can go so low and so minute in detail that, over his last 36, Brian Harman's been pretty darn good at par fours of this level. But in the last 12 rounds on short and easy courses, he hasn't been good. So that's just what the numbers are saying. I don't know. Brian Harman to me is just, I think 22's too low for my liking. I'm not going to bet Webb at 10-1. I was all over Webb last week, and that didn't turn out well at the WGC. Hideki, 14-1's fair. Not crazy to go bet it. Louis, 16. I mean, until he wins something other than the Open Championship, come talk to me. Reed at 20, it's fair. Kokrak at 22, fair. And you get to the kind of the second tier here. You got Will Zalatorius at 28. Russell Henley at 30, who I'm basically already have a win bet on. I like Henley a lot. Sung Jae at 30. Kevin Na at 35. I like quite a bit. I think 35 is a bit too low for Kevin Na. But the winner at the Sony this year generally plays well on wedge-type courses because he's not long off the tee. Generally a pretty good putter. Again, this is short, easy courses, strokes gained total. He's second. Pretty darn good. Doesn't generate the most opportunities, but he's good from the distance. So I like Kevin Na this week. I think 35 is a bit too shallow, but I understand the reasoning if you want to bet him. Bobby Mack at 40, Adam Scott at 40, Siwoo Kim at 40. If you bet Siwoo, which I'm always going to have FOMO on Siwoo Kim, but you're basically doing the correlation course narrative here with the Amex, which is certainly a reasonable take to have. I try to wean myself off Siwoo because I just like Siwoo Kim. I like betting him, but a lot of people forget that he's only 25 years old, 26, because it seems like he's been on the PGA Tour forever. He jumped on the scene winning the Players when he was 22 or so, 21, 22. So people forget how young he is. But I know I bet him too often. So, but at 45-1 or 40-1, it's a pretty good value to me. And then you have Seamus Power, Tommy Fleetwood. Fleetwood's on the outside looking in right now at the top 125 in the FedEx Cup standings. He's 132nd or so. So he needs a good week to qualify. Fleetwood's 45, Woodland's 45, Schwartzel's 45, and Matthew Wolff is 45. And then rounded out with Kevin Stroman at 50. I had a win bet at Gary Woodland at the Barracuda. He played well. He top 10. He's been playing pretty well as of late. And in a course that doesn't demand accuracy. Well, when I say it doesn't demand accuracy, when it forces you to lay up, Gary Woodland is pretty darn good. As evidenced in 2019 when he won the U.S. Open at Pebble Beach. He was in fuego with the irons that week. He was, dialed in with the putter, sure, but that was a dream setup for Gary Woodland when he could, he didn't have to worry about being accurate because the course forced him to lay up off the tee. And again, we don't have the Barracuda stats in at Fantasy National, but he's coming off an 11th at the 3M, missed the cut at the Rocket Mortgage in the Open, but he made the cut at the U.S. He 14th at the Charles Schwab, which is a somewhat of a correlated course, the Colonial. It's certainly a lot more difficult, but it is on the lower end of course length. So slight comparison. Again, Gary Woodland, 27th in my model. 45-1, probably fair. Not over the moon about it. It's probably fair. We still haven't reached Brian Stewart yet, and there's a reason. Brian Stewart's 100 to 1, and that number is really staring at me in the face. If he's number 1 in my data model, I don't know if I can. I understand and I envision him competing. To see him win the tournament, I'm having that mental block. And the numbers say I should just go all for it. So that's where I'm hesitating, I suppose. But I'm definitely going to put a win bet on Kuchar. I mean, Kuchar's an absolute bomb of a bet. He's at 180 to 1. But again, as I said, if there's ever a course for Kuchar to get right, to quote, get right, it would be Sedgefield. This plays to his strengths. Now, the chances of him winning aren't the greatest, but at 180 to 1, yeah, give me some Kuchar. So, I'm definitely going to have a win bet on Henley and on Kuchar. Ryan Armour is interesting because he has popped on a lot of the, what I'll call the base models, and he certainly played well here at Sedgefield. He's 36th in my rankings here for the mixed condition model. He's not great at generating opportunities, and he's certainly not a very good putter on Bermuda. But I went ahead and kind of looked at the weather. It's projected to be calm, maybe moderate. It's definitely not windy, so that helps. He's certainly at his best when the course is easy. So again, he's got some pretty good form here. Top 5 at the Barbasol, 6th at the 3M. Missed the cut at the John Deere and Rocket Mortgage, but he also had a top 10 at the Palmetto. So he's been playing fairly well at these, what we'll say, easier events. So Ryan Armour's somebody that I'm kind of, kicking the tires on, thinking about. He right now sits at, I just saw him. Where'd he go? Ryan Armour. He's at 100 to 1, like Brian Stewart. So certainly some bombs here that are rated fairly high in my model. Joel Damon, for example, he's at 100 to 1. He's 8th in my model. Russell Knox. Let's see. I haven't talked about Russell Knox. He is $300 to 1 and ranked 7th in my model. Again, putting, not always his strongest suit. Where'd he go? Right here. So 3 putt avoidance, not great. Generally not good at the distance either. But the thing that kind of concerns me with Russell Knox, he is best in the wind. And Bermuda is his worst surface. But he's best in the wind. Now, if he spikes and has a good putting week, sure. But does that mean he's going to win? I don't think so. I mean, at 300 to 1, it might be worth a shot. But if I'm going to take a long shot, I'm thinking I'm going to go Kuchar at 180 to 1, maybe Stewart, Damon, Armour at 100. I haven't seen many players that I like beyond Kuchar at 180. Again, Matthew Neesmith, we saw he's the number 1 iron player, basically, strokes gained approach. Matsuyama, I mean, Neesmith is 6th. What was he number 1 on? Was it maybe short or easy? I can't remember. But he was number 1 on one of the base models in there. He's at 250, but, I mean, he can't really do anything else. Look, he's number 1 in the last 36 rounds of the proximity. Number 22 in the last 12 rounds. But everything else is just so god awful. Just bad. So, I don't know. Maybe a DFS play, in which we'll get into the DFS tactics Wednesday night, but I'm not feeling Matthew Neesmith in that regard. Yeah, again, I'm just seeing. I think the most comfortable I'd be willing to go on a bomb is Matt Kuchar. Although, if you want to believe Russell Knox in the 301, I can understand it because of the model in these, good at short, easy courses. He's been great at the as a baseline for the proximity. I don't know. He's just even if he has a good putting week, I don't see that translating to a win. I see that translating as more as like a top 10 or a top 20. So yeah, that's that part of the data. Again, guys, let me know if you want to see somebody that I haven't talked about in chat or in comment, after the show, what you want to see or anything. But let's take a look at some crossover events here. So let's go to this course breakdown. And I mentioned that the first one we'll take a look at is Harbour Town. The Heritage from earlier this year. Actually, it'd probably be easier to go to the 2021 RBC Heritage. Shoot. Well, let me go to. Let's look at. There we go. Sorry, sometimes it gets finicky. So here's the Heritage leaderboard from this past year, the week after the Masters. Stewart Cink was your winner. The course is short. It is a Pete Dye course, not a Don Ross design, but it's a short course. It generally plays tougher than Sedgefield, but you see here that Webb Simpson generally plays well there. Corey Connors is always an elite ball striker. Cam Smith's a great short game player. Sung Jae, who's in the field this week. DJ's kind of the outlier here. People think of him as a bomber, and he is, but he doesn't get enough credit for his short game and how good he can be with his wedges. You see Kuchar here, Brian Harmon, Brian Stewart. So here's a few of the kind of names that kind of pop up here on the top of this leaderboard. If we look at 2020, Webb was your winner at Harbour Town. Let's see. There's Bryson, Justin Rose, who's out on the outside looking in of the top 125. You got Fitzpatrick, Johnny Vegas. Again, DJ just plays well at this course. Corey Connors, he's not in the field, but these kind of players is what you want to target. There's Brian Harmon. So there's a look at the Heritage. And again, in 2020, it actually played easy and short. So there's and Bermuda Greens. So there's the absolute direct comparison for you. Let's take a look at the Sony Open. I have to remember that it wants the tournament first, not the year. Oh, so here's the Sony Open. Again, par 70, Bermuda, easy, short. And this is very close to a direct comp course. It's just the fact that it's in Hawaii and not the same part of the country. But Kevin Na was your winner, 21 under, which again is very similar to winning scores at Sedgefield. It's 21, 22, 23 generally. Chris Kirk, another player in the field this week, was second. Webb Simpson pops again. You've got Russell Henley at 11th. Let's see. Who else is in this field? There's Hideki, Stewart Cink, who also played well at the Heritage and ended up winning later in the year. Siwoo. I don't know if Sepp Straka's in this field or not. I haven't seen him. So, and then if you look at 2020, come on. There we go. So Cam Smith was your winner. Again, excellent short game. It actually played pretty difficult. That was due to the wind. In 2020, the wind was just howling. So that made it difficult conditions. Cameron Smith was your winner. Webb's up there. Kevin Kisner's played well 2 years. Matsuyama, 2 top 20s. There's Connors, the same style of player. There's Joel Damon. Brendan Todd, when length isn't a factor, he generally plays pretty well. Sung Jae. There's Neesmith at 32nd. So you get an idea of the types of players who are going to do well at these courses. I'm going to do one more, the Amex. And this was Siwoo's win earlier this year. Again, easy, short courses. Been on. There's Brian Harmon again. Sung Jae again. There's Russell Knox, 16th. Woodland, tied for 16th. Armour, tied for 16th. Ricky was 21st. And then if we look at 2020 for the Amex, you'll notice that all 3 of the courses were used. All 3 have Bermuda. They're all short and they're all easy. So this is a pretty darn good direct correlation of a course. Landry popped. He won this year, or won last year in 2020. And then Abraham Answer. And you'll see the scores, 26, 24, 23 for Scheffler. Straka at 20. Sam Burns, who withdrew this year. Ricky Fowler. So we've got a 10th and a 21st for Ricky. Sung Jae, 10th and 21st. There's Kevin Na again. Matthew Neesmith. So maybe there is something for Neesmith here. I wouldn't go crazy on a win bet, but maybe as a top 20 or so, maybe. There's Leviota, Munoz, Brian Harmon keeps popping in these. KH Lee keeps popping. I don't know if KH Lee's playing this week or not. There's Mackenzie Hughes. KH Lee, I don't see him. There he is. He's 250 to 1. So he's played fairly well on these courses as well. So that'll give you a good idea of the crossover success that some of these guys have. I'm going to round this out, make sure I haven't missed any chat. Again, guys, if you're watching live, jump in chat. Would love to hear what you're thinking about. Of course, Wednesday we're going to get into our DFS tactics. We'll look at the wind and see if there's any favors for afternoon or morning waves and such. But because of the crossover success, I want to take a look one more time at short, easy courses. And let's just take a overview. We'll say the last 24 rounds, just because it's not very common. The more filters you apply, the smaller the size you want to put, because if you do last 36, you might get rounds that are in 2018, 17, and such. So you want to try to limit it a little bit. But in the last 24 rounds, Webb Simpson, Kevin Na, Justin Rose, Brendan Todd, Siwoo Kim are your top 5. Then Hadwin, Hadley, Putnam, Scott, and Sung Jae. What's Sung Jae sitting at? I think we talked about him a little bit earlier. He is sitting at 30 to 1. So at 30 to 1, it's Sung Jae or Henley, and for me, it's pretty clearly Henley. He's second in my model, whereas Sung Jae is 37th. What's Sung Jae not showing well on? He's really bad lately from the proximity, and he's not great at the par 4s. He hasn't been good at the par 4s, so yeah. Well, hopefully that'll help answer some questions that you might have on some outright betting. I for sure am going to have a win bet on Russell Henley. I'm going to for sure have a win bet on Matt Kuchar. I'm kicking the tires on Ryan Armour and Brian Stewart. I'll probably end up betting Stewart just because he's number one in the model, although I don't feel great about it. But again, let me know what you all think in the comments. Or if you want to reach out to me on social media, of course, the links are down below in the description of the video. So, again, guys, tune in Wednesday for the DFS tactics. At that point, we'll be going over the prices, and I really think there's going to be some value where you can go dip your toes into the 6Ks, and perhaps gain some leverage on some of your competitors this week. But until then, may all your bets be profitable.